So I've just come back from a ride on my favorite bike, and this back wheel is a little bit hotter than it should be, and that I do not like one little bit. The problem is right here with this back brake caliper, and more specifically these two floating pins. Now these pins sit in a sliding rubber at the back here, and it looks like this rubber has perished and water has gotten in there, and this back caliper is not floating anymore, and that's causing the heat going into the disc, which is going into the wheel, and that's not good. I'm going to show you guys how to fix this problem without buying the rubbers, if you can get them, because they seem to be obsolete, and if you can get them, they're really expensive. But I'm going to show you a workaround for this whole system. We're going to improve the system considerably. We're going to make it better. We're going to fix it, and then I can get back on my bike and ride. I love these old bikes. You really have no problem finding a manual. And if you have a manual, you can do anything. So let's see if we can sort out this problem. So I can strip this and I can do a video of it, but the problem is it's very finicky at the back of the bike, and I can't do better than an exploded view. Now, very simply, the problem is by these items number 11 and number 2. It's the floating pins that sit in these little rubber linear sliders. And what has happened is these rubber sliders have perished over the years, and the back end, which is supposed to be sealed, is actually broken off. Now both sides had broken off, and the pin had gotten corroded, and this whole back caliper had seized, so it didn't want to move. And of course that didn't want to move, so it was getting stuck on the brake disc, and it was causing the back wheel to get hot. This is the problem that we need to solve. So I need to make a plan about these rubbers, and I'm not going to buy them because they are proper expensive. So here's the rub. I needed to science the crap out of this. Because the original had rubber, it was rubber for a reason. It needed sort of float, the caliper needed to move. So I couldn't just use any material. And a plastic like nylon or Vesconite or anything like that is just too hard for the application. There is one plastic, however, that makes an excellent bearing, and it's actually not that hard. If you find yourself some PTFE, which is exactly the same type of material that thread tape is made out of, it actually makes a perfect soft linear bearing. Now typically this gets used in elevators and any extremely low friction bearing plastic application. So it is perfect for my brake sliders. So with the brake caliper pulled away, okay, whoa, that's a little bit easier said than done. Just a quick tip here. That outer brake pad has got a spring that sort of holds it in place. Now you need to pull that spring away from the caliper piston. Otherwise, when you compress the caliper piston to get the caliper off of the brakes, it sort of hits that spring and the caliper doesn't want to come out. So just make sure that that spring is pushed all the way to the back, and then you're good to go. That caliper will come off quite nicely. These linear bearings just get pushed in, and let me grab the camera. I'll show you what they look like on the back end. So you can see they do stick out in the back end a little bit, the same as the rubber ones, but because they're completely sealed in their plastic, they're not going to break off. The pin itself is a good idea to polish these pins so you get a nice bearing clean surface, and that's just with a little bit of very fine sandpaper, sort of about 800 grit, and then Brasso, and then you get this beautiful finished surface. And then all that happens is this gets a tiny little bit of grease on. You pop it in there and you torque it, or you put a little bit of Loctite on there, pop it in, torque it up, and there you go. Good to go. Perfect brake system.
I found that I've got no drag on my back brakes at the moment, so it's worked beautifully. It's actually interesting. I've had the solid disc wheel on the back of my Softail for a while. I've been rebuilding the spoke wheel, and before I modified those bearings, I actually found that the disc was getting a bit hot and was pulling the heat in from the disc itself, because the brakes were rubbing on the disc. So this small little modification has taken that away completely. That back disc doesn't get hot at all. So I'm pretty chuffed with that very, very simple and easy repair.